Good evening, Ms. Z's. I am re-recording the session 5 for my final presentation for the housing market crisis, the absence of leadership. So I would first like to give you some background on why I chose the housing market crisis. Between 2000, I believe, 7 through 2010, the U.S. faced this huge financial crisis due to the housing market crash, and that was caused by primarily the subprime mortgage crisis or the predatory loans with the adjustable rate mortgages um, that were provided to borrowers that were unqualified, predominantly those with under 600 credit score or limited amount of collateral or a bad history of credit repayment. And so from 2004 to 2006, the housing market, the property value of houses increased substantially. And so these loans were based on the fact that the property value of the would continue to rise. And so these loans that were offered at a very low interest rate for about the first 2 years, in which after that, then they would adjust. And when they adjusted substantially to almost from 1.2, pretty much almost 5 to 10 points. What happened was the homeowners found themselves, as the property value declined from 2007 to 2010, what we call upside down. So the value of their property was less than the amount that they owed. So the value of the property may have been $250,000, but they purchased the home at a $450,000. So the difference in that they still had to pay, which means there's less than desired equity, so they can't pull equity, and so they remain upside down, paying a property bill or a mortgage that is way outside their economic boundaries. So that's just a little history on that. And so we found what the contributing factors were on slide 2 is there was an influx of non-traditional lenders to what they call the expansion of private label securities. So these lenders that just pretty much pushed money into the market. And as they pushed money into the market, investors were taking advantage of these security-backed mortgages. So they were making money off people borrowing money, basically. Excuse me. And so that's when we come into these subprime loans, or we call predatory, or these teaser rates. So they would attract the borrowers, and by the way, which were more either borrowers that were looking to refinance their home based off the lower interest rate, either for retirement or to pay off their kids' college, or even to invest back into their home. So they were refinancing, but the kicker was the refinance was only for a limited time. And so the loaner, these non-traditional, they banked on the fact that they did not think that the borrowers would refinance in time. And by the time they did refinance, if it was anywhere between 2007 and 2010, then they lost equity, which means that they had no equity within their house to actually refinance and or any collateral from the beginning. Once again, we're talking about the unqualified borrowers, people with a credit score under 600, people who should not have been, who should not have taken out loans with adjustable rates that would swing from one extreme to the other. That's more for like corporates or large organizations. It should never have been for personal loans or for home ownership. So they took advantage of homeowners, the value of home ownership, that American dream. And so they promoted these teaser rates, which attracted borrowers that were unqualified. And then, in my opinion, it's capitalism. This economy is built on a capitalist, so it's a dog eat dog. It is geared towards a greedy environment that just continuously thrives off making money. There's really no ethics, there's really no accountability, and there's really little oversight. And so what we go into on slide 3 is what I call the blame game. Who do we blame? Can you place all the blame on the private investors? Yes, they do have some responsibility in being accountable, but they were not subject to those same rules and regulations as like federal FHA or the Federal Housing Administration, which those loans were actually insured by the government. But they also had very strict requirements. So the buyers could not, the credit had to be substantially good to almost great. And they needed collateral, and also some of them required about a 10% down payment. So that was less attractive to a lot of borrowers that were on with a limited income. And then that, the decline of FHA loans as well. So the more attractive the private lenders were, then the less loans that were being taken out from FHA. We can blame it on subprime loans, the predatory, the teaser rates, but at the same time, it is also responsibility of the borrower to understand the agreement that they're going into. And some of them, yes, they were less than shady or less than legitimate practices by the broker, but they were not. They're operating outside of the normal government oversight and rules and regulations that either banks or lending organizations are supposed to abide by. We can look at the American dream, everyone chasing after that, trying to keep up with the Joneses, purchasing the home way outside of your economic reach. But some people would say, oh, that maybe it's a blessing. And then the borrower illiteracy is what I call it. It's just being knowledgeable about the types of agreements that you're going into, what you're responsible as the borrower, and what the lender is responsible to, and holding them accountable as well. And so the next slide, I look at the future of fair housing. What does that mean? That does mean more government oversight and regulation. While we're looking at in our political environment right now, it's less control of the government. When it comes to money, and when it comes to what the driving forces that do dictate where money is going, there has to be some type of oversight or regulation or organization that's managing it to ensure that those, outside or lower economic, low to mid economic classes are not being taken advantage of. Also, that it's fair, that these loans are being provided to across all ages, sexes, that we're not discriminating, ensure everyone has an equal access to that American dream. And qualifying factors to ensure that they are strict qualifying factors for certain loans at certain prices. And then to create programs that promote healthy credit, healthy lending, healthy responsible credit, or responsible purchases through credit, to educate the community and educate borrowers as well as lenders what is their responsibility and how to look at their income ratio based on how much they are indebted. To not be a slave to the lender, but to be an owner, a primary owner in your credit or in your economic profile, to be the primary owner. And then the regulation of arms. They, in my opinion, need to be eliminated when it comes to domestic homes, purchase of a home, a single-family home, or a home. I think it's more suited for organizations or large organizations, corporate loans, where they would probably make more money, not as easily as they did with the influx of homes or buyers, buying homes to between 2006 and 2010, but it still does lend a certain payback. It's not like it's certain profit that they'll make. So what we look at is leadership in housing. That we see there was a lack of leadership, and so to reestablish that leadership, and we need to look at trust. There needs to, those governing bodies need to reestablish that trust between the borrower and the lender, between those governing bodies and the community, or the American citizen that's looking for home ownership. They need to be able to trust that their money is just as important as someone who is rich or someone whose income is, um, you know, um, they're not counting pennies. Um, and in order to ensure that trust, they need transparency. Transparency shows that, hey, we messed up. I looked at one of the scandals in Wells Fargo and or Volkswagen, just finally admitting that you made a mistake. And then what are you going to do? What steps have you taken to ensure the trust of the community um, and your constituents and or your customers? How are they going to trust you other than through transparency? And then techniques to hold them accountable, to ensure that they understand that there are rules and regulations, and there will be discipline for those who do not abide by those rules and regulations. Johnson said rules, climates are governed by policy, rules, procedures developed in organizations. So we have to redevelop that climate, that there are rules and regulations that have to be abided by in order for everyone to be treated fairly when it comes to providing loans and or resources for home ownership. And then finally, I looked at God in the housing business, which is God is in all of our business. He is in our economics, he's in our politics. He's ever present even when it seems even more chaotic, which is pretty much was the environment between 2007 and 2010. The increased amount of foreclosures, people losing their homes, the absence of a whole neighborhoods just disappearing. But still God being in control, because regardless of how the situation was playing out, I feel like he was still ever present, because that was the consequence. That was what we can see, the consequence of greed, of capitalism, when we're not living morally, and we're not looking to God to guide us. Then we step outside of his will and his grace and his purpose, and we're led by greed, we're led by fear. And so my suggestion is just to acknowledge him in all our ways, in our economy, in our politics, not just the good ways, but especially the bad ways, to acknowledge them and show that, hey, that those are the areas in which we need help and which we need guidance. Even looking at one of the journal Between the King um, and the children of Israel asking for a king, and the warning of, hey, do you want a centralized control? You actually do have right now? I am your king, I am your God. But do you want man to do this? And in turn, the consequences were they were enslaved, they were used for labor. So it just, just to first off that we just need to acknowledge it in all ways, and we need to shape this environment, reshaping through trust, through transparency, through technique, through us showing how to operate ethically. Be good stewards of our blessings, to show the education in managing your money, managing your debt, managing your income to your ratio debt, responsible lending, responsible credit use, and above all, avoid being a slave to the lender. To produce generational wealth, the Word of God tells us that we should be, I'm paraphrasing, saving for our generation. So, whereas it's not just yours, you are ensuring the health and the wealth and the financial stability of your grandchildren and your grandchildren's grandchildren. And then ultimately just trust in the Lord. And we will be fine. Won't be perfect, but we will be fine. And we will recuperate. We will learn from our mistakes.
but we will be okay.